I'm Thom Hartmann in Washington, D.C., and here's what's coming up tonight on The Big Picture. Tomorrow, supporters of Bernie Sanders will be coming together at house parties across the country. In just the last week, the number of registered parties organized by volunteers has grown to over 2,500 events, and the number of total RSVPs has nearly tripled to over 75,000 support. Actually, today I heard it was over 86,000, and I've heard numbers as high as 100,000. All of the planning for these parties has been set up online through volunteers. According to the Bernie Sanders campaign website, these parties are critical to building the people power that the campaign will need to build in order to push back against big money interests who want to simply buy our elections. But this is just a first step. Here now to discuss how progressivism will shape this next election and how Bernie Sanders can generate the popular support he needs is Thom Hartmann, political director for Progressive Democrats of America. PDAmerica.org is the website. Steve, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here.
So, first of all, for people who might not be familiar with PDA, Progressive Democrats of America, you want to give us a snapshot of the organization?
So, Progressive Democrats of America started it in 2004 at the end of the Democratic Convention. We came out of basically the Kucinich for President campaign, the first one. And so we've been around about 11 years. A couple of years ago, we started on a strategy of trying to be part of a small group that was trying to convince Bernie Sanders to run for president, that the issues were there. There was a block of voters waiting for somebody to talk truth to him, and that he could fill that role, and that he would get a good response. Now, in all honesty, I didn't imagine the response that he has gotten, which has been off the charts, as you were talking about earlier. And this event tomorrow is going to be a record-breaking event. There's been nothing like it in the history of American politics, where roughly 100,000 people are going to get together on the same night and talk about how to organize to win delegates and go to the Democratic National Convention next summer.
If this is truly a revolutionary moment, I mean, this is as you said, there's been never anything seen like this in the history of American politics. Why is there no coverage of it?
Well, I think you explored some of the reasons for that a little earlier, Tom. They're a little afraid of Bernie. He says things that don't fit the prevailing mythology of what makes America work. I mean, the truth is, since you've written on this several times, things that made America work are actually many of the things Bernie Sanders talks about. Regulated economy, public goods, strong workers' rights, and strong unions that can, Medicare for everybody would be an interesting thing that, of course, Europe has and we don't. And
Canada has and we don't. Mexico has and we don't.
Which, and Bernie,
Costa Rica has and we don't.
As you know, Bernie was the first politician to take a bus across to Canada to get the cheap drugs, to prove that on one side of the border in Vermont they cost this much, and on the Canadian side they cost this much. That's ancient history now. That's, you know,
I was living in Montpelier when that happened.
17 years old, right? So what's happened? The money guys that run the Democratic Party have pulled it further and further in a conservative direction economically, leaving the base of the party, the old Franklin Delano Roosevelt working base of the party, which has grown now to include African Americans and Latinos, left them behind. And that group of people was waiting for somebody to talk to them. 25 years ago, Jesse Jackson talked to them specifically and got a huge response. Bernie Sanders is now doing the same thing. And he's getting this incredible response, 11,000 in Phoenix. 3 months ago, anybody walked up to you and said Bernie Sanders is going to go to Phoenix, Arizona and put 11,000 people in a convention center, Chuck Todd would have laughed at him. Yeah. And yet it happens, and it's still not that interesting to them. The interesting things ought to be the things that you didn't predict beforehand. And Bernie's doing a bunch of those right now.
Yeah, I think this is big news. I think it's really big news. What's the state of progressivism? By the way, you mentioned the coalition, the base coalition. I would add to that, young people. I mean, Bernie's talking about making every public college in the United States, public college and junior college free, and doing away with student debt. Older people, retirement age, who are looking at seeing their Social Security be privatized by Republicans and Medicare voucherized, and women. Women's issues are huge right now, and Hillary Clinton is a woman, and so I think everybody assumed that she was just going to get the women's vote. But Bernie's pulling, it's not all men who are showing up at these events.
I agree with you, and I would add one thing. Bernie's the only one running who voted against both Iraq wars. And here you have Mike Huckabee talking total trash about Iran's going to take people to the ovens with this pact. Most of the American people were on the side of the president on this one. He's going to win this fight. He's going to keep this agreement. And Bernie's the one who voted the last time not to go in the war, that taught us the lesson about how painful that can be.
Yeah.
I'll make one more point on what you said about this broad coalition. Bernie Sanders is familiar with the Jackson campaign in the 80s. He was part of it. One of the little-known facts about Bernie Sanders, he's the only white elected official who endorsed Jesse Jackson twice. And
he actually carried Vermont.
He helped carry Vermont. That's actually when I met Bernie, was on the eve of the Vermont caucus, where I went representing the Jackson campaign, and we did the last-minute preparations to win the caucus there, April of 1988. Bernie understands that coalition that Jackson built, and he's in the process of taking it to another level. It's a very interesting thing. It's part of the reason he ran as a Democrat, because he understood the power of Jackson speaking the issues in the primary.
Steve, great to see you.
Tom, thank you
Keep up the
very
great
much.
work. PDAmerica.org.
All right,
Thanks
thank
so
you.
much. And that's the way it is tonight, Tuesday, July 28th, 2015. And don't forget, democracy begins with you. Get out there, get active, tag, you're it.